Welcome to the Post Shift Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC. What has happened to Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Sean Sewell. It's our first live stream for 2025. I can't believe it's 2025 already. We're a quarter of the way through the century. This is going to be a big thing for me this year, is that we're a quarter way through the century. So what are you doing to change up your life and make it better? For our first live stream for the year, I've got a whole bunch of episodes already in the can, ready to roll out. That's going to be with some of Canada's top authorities on and association leaders on the hospitality industry in Canada as a whole. So today is Restaurant Canada, Able BC, and BCRFA in the next couple of weeks. So then we're rolling back into business of the industry. So of course we're talking to Chris Maffeo he's the Bottoms Up Drink Builder and host of the podcast Maffeo Drinks. If you are a small brand, whether you're a bar, a restaurant, a small craft distillery, a brewery, a winery, anything, this man's going to be able to give you some really good in-depth knowledge on how to build your brand up. And I've been following for a long time on LinkedIn. We don't actually have a prior relationship before this, so I just love how inspirational his LinkedIn and his posts are at all times, really breaking down how to build a brand properly and really being quite raw and honest about, yes, you got that one sale, but how do you make the second one? So I'm really looking at having this conversation with Chris. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Sean. Like it's a pleasure. It's been a while. We've been following each other for a while, and now finally we are speaking to each other.
Well, funnily enough, I think back in the pandemic days, I don't think it's an app that sort of came and went, and I don't think many of us use it. But like during the pandemic, we had nothing to do. We connected through Clubhouse.
Exactly.
And we were listening to some rooms, and we sort of put our 2 cents. Anyone who doesn't know what Clubhouse is, it's still kicking around, but I don't use it much. I'm not sure if you do. It was kind of like a chat room that was verbal, and it was kind of cool and fun at the time. And we had like a good 3 to 6 months of Clubhouse relationship there. So that's where we sort of started, because when I actually messaged you on LinkedIn, the last message was actually from the Clubhouse days.
Exactly. I thought we had spoken like more recently, and then I was like, "What was it? 2021?" I said,
"Yeah,
wow,
it was 2021."
Like, thanks for accepting my connection, Sean. 2021.
So for everybody listening, give me your 2 cents on where did you get your start? Like how do we get to this stage of Bottoms Up Drink Builder and Maffeo Drinks podcast and stuff like that? Where did you get your start?
So the funny thing was that, I started, in a nutshell, it comes from this. Actually, I show you, like, this is my great grandfather and grandfather's shop. He was a wholesaler in the south of Italy. The business was open for 100 years. And then when he died, I was 6 years old, and the shop closed. And that has left me with this thing. Like, I thought about it out in hindsight, and I thought, like, all that knowledge of 100 years of knowledge got lost just because nobody in the family wanted to continue the business. No? And then, I was a sales guy in Rome, selling to on-trade and, on-premise and bars and restaurants. And then I started my career agencies, and then SAB Miller, for those familiar with that, it doesn't exist anymore, was swallowed by AB InBev, and then was purchased, the European business was purchased by Asahi Breweries. So I stayed in the beer world. Then I went into Carlsberg. And throughout my career in the corporate world, I never really felt a corporate type of guy, especially because I was always working for the export departments of these big giants. So I was always the small guy in the big room, like I was always the, launching brands with very small money in countries where nobody knew them. And that has changed my perspective. So in a nutshell, my thinking is basically driven by, first of all, starting in beer. That is a very much of a velocity game. You don't just put a bottle in the back bar, you're putting kegs. And if you open that keg, and if that keg doesn't rotate, the product goes off. And then the bar owner shouts at you, and delists you. So I've always thought, like, grow rotation before distribution. This is my first thing. And then the other thing was that I was working with export. So it's always like working with wholesalers, third parties. And I've always been thinking all these beautiful messages that the marketing department, global teams are making and doing, it doesn't resonate if it, that game, like the phone game that, you pass the, you whisper the word in the ear of the next one. It gets lost throughout these third parties. So you have to keep it really simple, because otherwise basically you just, losing yourself, and, everything gets lost. All the message gets lost. So these two things are the biggest things that basically brought me where I am. And fun enough, the global, the Clubhouse thing was the way I entered into the spirits world, because, I still remember Paul Letko from Few Spirits asking me a question one day, and I was like, oh, there's nobody else called Chris, so it must be me. And then I answered, and I was like, do you mean me? Yeah. And then he started like pulling me in these questions, and it was all these spirits and North American driven craft spirits producers. And that was the eureka moment for me. I was like, I really love the spirits world, and I want to start working with it. And that's where I am.
So when it does come to brand building, and like Few Spirits is a amazing craft distillery, still like it's very well known, it's still very well distributed, but it's still small in comparison to the big guys. When it comes to brand building, in the craft spirit movement, what do you think the key pillars that the brand owners should be focusing on?
The main thing is fixing the fundamentals. There's a lot of like the whole thing about brands are built bottom up that I'm always talking about, is the fact that you should focus first on the unscalable things, so that then you can scale. If you don't master how to sell the first bottle, how to first, to empty that first bottle, how to sell the second bottle, how to sell the first case, if you don't master all the dynamics of that, of rejection from bar owners, from bar staff, people that don't know you and don't want to list your brand, people that deny themselves and they say, I'm not the owner, I'm staff, I will talk to the owner. If you don't understand those dynamics, in my opinion, humble opinion, you will never succeed. Because, there's too much thinking about raising funds. I want to raise $1 million, I want to raise $500,000, and then you will just burn that money, because you will start hiring people without knowing what to tell them, where to focus on. You will start to buy some influencers. You start to do some Instagram advertising. You will start with, looking for a distributor that then, just sign a contract and then doesn't, reorder, and you will just get stuck. So if you don't understand the fundamentals, what I call the boring stuff before the sexy stuff, choosing the packaging, choosing the design of the bottle, of the cork, those are the sexy things. Those are the things that wake you up and makes you excited. I was a marketeer. I started in branding agencies. I started like that. But then in the end, it's just like the rubber, hits the roads, and what happens next?
Do you think that's because I work with a lot of craft distilleries, I've helped develop a lot of spirits, like just the juice in the bottle. I've had my 2 cents on like bottle design and a few other things that sometimes get listened to, sometimes don't. Do you find that a lot of I think any section, like it's very passion versus business, and they're very passionate about, and this goes down to restaurants, comes down to bars, comes down to everything. Oh, I really love making wine, or I really love wine country, or something like that. How do you sort of broach this with ownership when it comes to being, you can see they're so passion driven, but the business side of their brain is sort of like empty?
That's funny, because actually, like a couple of days ago, I had a bit of an exchange with someone on LinkedIn. I had written one of my posts that I repurposed because I like them, and I say, 99% of drinks builders that I speak to, brand owners I speak to, they don't like to sell. They don't want to sell. And this guy replied to me and I said, I'm a creator, so of course I don't like to sell and I don't want to sell. And I said, yeah, but then you should have someone in your ownership, a partner, an investor, or whoever that goes out there. So you can stay at home while this person is going to go out, because you cannot just create in a kind of like alchemy. I'm based in Prague, so like a Rudolph II, type of way with alchemists in the castle, without going down into the city and selling your potions, no? So this is the biggest challenge, because it's a passion industry. You don't enter, I mean, you enter to make money, but most of the people enter because they love they either work in the big companies, or they're passionate about gin or whiskey or tequila or whatever that is, no? So it's natural to be pulled into this craft and creativity. But then you have to understand that nobody's waiting for your product. I mean, nobody's waiting for that. So either you just go and really understand and build these relationships, or you don't succeed. And the other thing, just to close the loop, is also that relationships are overrated in this industry, in my opinion, because everybody thinks like, oh, I've got a lot of contacts, and I've seen it myself. I mean, I had, thousands of connections on LinkedIn when I started my own consulting, and the phone was not ringing.
Yeah.
despite the fact that everybody said that they were loving working with me, nobody called me. So, and the thing is that nobody's waiting for that. So you may have a lot of people, a lot of bartenders that or like thousands of bartenders on your Instagram, but nobody's waiting for the product unless you solve a problem for them.
Yeah, I've had a lot of friends go from the bar side of things and become like reps for distribution companies, and they're like, "Oh, it's going to be easy because I got tons and tons of contacts." I'm like, "Yeah, you got tons of contacts. You're going to call on those contacts. Are they going to buy anything from you, or are they just going to do you a favor and buy something from you once?" Now, I'm curious. The guy on LinkedIn, did he actually did the person that called you out on LinkedIn go, "Oh, that makes sense," and actually take your advice, or they were like, "Nope, I'm just going to be the creator and that's it"?
No, I mean, like he put a hand clapping sign under that, so I guess he got it. No, but I mean, like it's also like sometimes, especially because I don't own a brand, I own, let's say, my brand, Maffeo Drinks, that's my brand, and it's funny how similar building a podcast and a consulting business is to building a product, because that's the dynamics are the same, and so when I'm kind of like shouting out there, I'm shouting to the mirror, I'm shouting to myself, when I say get out there, dear brand owner, I'm actually saying it to myself, so I don't want to be perceived as the smart guy in the room that knows it all. It's just that because I'm pushing myself and I hit that wall all the time, and that's how I know. So there's no right or wrong, first of all, and there's no silver bullets, otherwise we would all be millionaires by now, no?
God, I wish. We're going on 400 episodes of the podcast. So you've seen since you've sort of started focusing on craft spirits, you've sort of seen the tail end of their increase, and now we're sort of starting to see like a leveling out. I'm seeing this very big time in Canada, especially in BC, where at one stage we had 87 distilleries in BC, and we've seen a lot of those sort of close and shutter over the last couple of years. What do you think this craft spirit movement in North America and in your area in Europe is going to sort of look like in 2025?
That's an interesting one. I mean, I don't have the crystal ball. I'm always skeptic in giving let's say this kind of views, but from what I see and from who I'm interacting with, the brands that are succeeding are the ones that manage to create demand. Those are the ones, I see them all the time. Like I go to Bar Convent. I'm a speaker there, I've been for the last 3 years in Berlin, the one in Berlin. And I walk around the aisles, and I see the stands, and I wrote a guide about this, how to do Bar Convent, because, it's very simple to say, okay, I've got some money, I buy a booth, and people will pass by and I will talk to them. No, it doesn't happen like this. I've seen so many people on their phone, empty booths, drinking a glass of water and reordering the bottles for the 700th time. Because nobody's going there, So sorry
to interrupt, but Bar Convent, just for everybody who's listening, is an absolute beast of a show. Like, it's not like a lot of little shows that you can sort of go to and sort of make a little bit of penetration by having a booth. Like Bar Convent is a massive, massive show. So as you were saying, like the booth, it might be small and in the corner, but like you really need to do something special to make it go pop.
Absolutely. And what I see, and thanks for clarifying that. What I see is that people that have built demand before going there, they are the ones that succeed. They are the ones with the full stand. Those are the people where, when you see a crowd of like 20, 30 people around that bar, those are the people that I know them from Instagram, I know them from LinkedIn, I know them already because I've seen them repeatedly. But the people that do the kind of like old school way, like I'm not on Instagram, I've got my 300 followers and they post every once a week, they will never succeed. Now, it's not a matter of Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, but it's a matter of like building that demand before capturing that demand. And I'm talking a lot about this. You cannot capture it if you haven't created it before, because nobody knows you before.
So let's bring up that point. I think, and you brought it up before, like as an entrepreneur, dealing with the ask I find is always the tough thing. Like I promote myself a lot. Like I've got Instagram followers and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to like actually sealing the deal and dealing with the ask, I find it the hardest thing to do. I'm not really a talker person. I've got a podcast and I'm not really a talker, but I'm not really a talker per se. When it comes to when I'm consulting, it's more of like wind me up and let me go and I'll show you what I do. I'm more of a like I can show you what I can do instead. I'm not going to sweet talk you. Do you find brand owners that's where the biggest thing is? Like they want to take a bottle into a bar, they do a tasting, but it's that last step that like, hey, let's talk about a cocktail. Hey, let's talk about a listing. Hey, let's talk about how we can move more of this product.
I think it's twofold on this one, because on the thing is that you need to master this unscalable thing that I discussed before, but then you have to scale it, and this is where it's tricky, because it's important to do this 1-2 things. I say it all the time on my podcast. I sit in bars and I say all the time I have a podcast, and I think half of the followers, the ones that I've interacted in Prague or wherever I was traveling, I literally clicked myself follow on Spotify, because, can you go, can you spell it for me? Yes, sure. So you have to do these things. And that night I gained 2 followers, on the thousands. So should I say, whatever, 2 followers, I don't even bother, like I need thousands. So people rush it into the thousands without doing the 1, 2, 3. And this is the biggest problem, so they think, on the scalable part, they think that they can just pass the ball to the next tier in the value chain. So whether it's an importer, a distributor, a wholesaler, however we want to call them. So it's just like, I created the product, I give it to Sean, he will buy pallets and he will sell in Canada. It doesn't work like that. Either I have my man or woman in Canada to help you sell and deplete that, pallet, or you will just like, it will just sit next to your other zillions of pallets that you have in your warehouse. And this is the misunderstanding that I see in this industry, is that it's not a B2C industry, it's a B2B to B to B to C industry. So people talk about building the brand with consumers, but then they get lost into the details of, there is an importer, this importer have got salespeople, they will sell to wholesalers, these wholesalers have got salespeople, and then in the meantime, maybe I have a person there, like a brand ambassador or a sales guy, myself, so there's all these little pieces, and if they don't own the narrative, it gets lost, because even if the consumer have seen that Instagram advert, they will never find the product. If the wholesaler, I haven't signed a deal with the wholesaler doesn't bring them the bottle, that person doesn't create that demand to do the transfer order, so that my brand ambassador pass that knowledge and they actually order through the wholesaler. So there's so many moving parts, and this is why it gets lost, that a lot of people just think that they can sit at the bar, and I talk about sitting at the bar a lot, and just, I sit at Sean's bar and I navigate you through that cocktails, and I got you in interested. But then in your bar, you will have 10 people working for you. So even if you bought that bottle, is that in the cashier system? Can you actually sell it out? Is it in the warehouse? Is it in the cellar? Is it in the back bar on the third line, that nobody sees, and when you're not there, nobody knows that it's there? There's so many of these parts that you need to master, and you don't have to study 1,500 bars. I mean, you can study, 15 bars, and you will understand the dynamics of what happens, and then you can start to have a conversation with importer, distributors, and scale that brand.
What's your biggest piece of advice when it comes to brands that are scaling and they're looking for a distributor? Because I've seen a lot of smaller craft distilleries here in BC and in Canada sort of partner up with the 3-tier system that most of the US has, and it has been good to a degree, but also bad to a degree, because sometimes you completely are disconnected. Like, it's not like you're doing trips to California or trips to New York on a regular basis to be able to check in with distributors. What's your biggest piece of advice for when small craft brands are trying to find distribution?
I mean, the first thing I say, it's always like, first of all, own your, win in your home turf. That's the first thing, because if you're a Canadian spirit or wine or whatever, you have to be known where you're from, because otherwise, if I sell an Italian gin and nobody knows it in Italy, it's a gimmick kind of thing, no? The second thing is that when you open markets, open them one by one. Focus on the first one. You've got your home turf and the first export. Then you've got the first export and the second export. But a lot of people, they want to open many export market just to put it on a PowerPoint deck for investors. Present in 15 markets, present in 25 markets across 5 continents. It doesn't work, because if you don't have the money to actually do AMP, advertising and promotion budget, and fuel that growth, you cannot do it. So either you fly there, or you have that person there, in doing it. And if you don't have, a lot of people say, but it's expensive, I cannot go to bars and ordering drinks at the bar. I mean, wherever it's legal, and caveat that, depending on the states and so on. But you can order a drink for yourself. I mean, that's legal, no? And they say, but I cannot do that. I cannot spend money like this. Yeah, but you can spend money on a booth in a conference, right? Or you can spend zillions of creating agency, creating your fantastic packaging. So it's this kind of like dichotomy of where do you put. If I give you $50,000, where do you put them? That's ultimately the litmus test. And then from that, you understand where to go and how to grow there. Because if you cannot go to California, don't look for an importer into California, because it would just sit there.
Yeah. So with that being said, there's always this sort of tension between staying small and independent, and then also scaling. Like, I'm sure you've seen the conversations always like, oh, they used to be small and independent, and then they sold to XYZ big company, and now they're not the same, and so on and so forth. How do you get your clients to balance their authenticity while also seeing that growth in the brand? Because it goes back to passion versus business. If they do have a good business acronym, they sort of go, okay, well, my goal is to sell. Like, that's what you should be building your brand to eventually do, so you can retire. You don't want to be doing this till you're 105 years old. So how do you get your clients to balance authenticity and growth in the brand when it comes to like that next big step?
That's the $1 million question, Sean. The first thing for me is, it's like in life. It's about walking the talk, So if I build my brand and I'm always talking, for example, about the legacy of my family and my great-grandfather, my grandfather, then if I were to sell Maffeo drinks, then people would say, like, what the hell is this guy talking about? He was talking about his family all the time, and then he sold it to a conglomerate. No? So that's the first thing. The second thing is about, what I see, the brands that are succeeding for me when they do that shift is, first of all, is the one that stay involved into the business. So if the new owner is wise enough to actually keep them in the business as the face of the business, first of all, most of the consumers, they won't even notice that that brand was bought by someone. And then if they keep that consistency of liquid product, the narrative, messaging, then it stays consistent. It doesn't matter who's put the money behind it. I mean, like, because if that helps me grow my scale, it means that I will bring this product to a lot more people. So I'm actually doing something nice for everyone, for not only for myself, But then if they sell it and then all of a sudden, it just like disappear because it disappear in a portfolio of one of the big top 10 spirits producers, then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, yeah, whatever. They changed the recipe or it's not as it used to be. And then all this kind of like conspiracy theory about liquids, kick in, and it's like, no, they removed the botanicals, like they removed 10 of the botanic, like all these kind of stories that sometimes are true, sometimes are just like BS, and this is, so that's what I would say.
I think we talked about in the green room, like the last episode I did in 2024 was Ford's with Simon Ford. And then I think he's a perfect example of like that scalability while still having very, very strong grasp on his brand.
Absolutely. I mean, like I've seen, I see many brands that, I don't even notice, or maybe when I tell someone, I said, no, but it's not, it's owned by this company now. Really? Is it? I never know. And people don't care in the end, because, if you, I want to have that bottle and that liquid, and I want to do a gin and tonic or a Boulevardier or whatever. And if it tastes the same, I don't care who sold it to me. Like if there's economies of scale, and actually maybe it's even a better deal for me than what it used to be, because now, the production is actually getting cheaper, or, I can get it in a more effective way. So be it.
So with there being so much competition, we've sort of talked about like Sin at a Bar as a bar and brand owner and that sort of thing. How do these small brands really carve out a niche, especially in the US market? I'm not sure too much about the European market when it comes to kickbacks and stuff, but like in the US, like big brands go, I'll give you money back, or I give you 13 on 12, that sort of thing. I was in Singapore for 6 months and everything's a deal in Singapore. Like everything can have a deal. How do the smaller brands compete against that?
That's a challenge. First of all, what I would firstly say is that if you take, because I've been working for, more than 30 markets in the world, on beer first, and then now on spirits. And, ultimately when you see that there's always this dichotomy of big and small brands, but actually in many cases, these big brands, when they are global giants, they actually strong in a handful of markets. The handful of market, like 3, 4, 5 markets, make 90% of their sales, which means that all in the all other markets, they're actually small brands. So now they've got money more than you as a small producer. But if you are well funded, I wouldn't bet my money that they are better off in terms of money than you are. Because if you are in whatever, Belgium or Germany or whatever that is, that small brand that maybe you're challenging, it could be like a 2,000 cases brand in that market, and you are already at 3,000 or 1,500, and probably you are funded. And if you use that money wisely, you can actually challenge that brand. And I see this all the time. In my market here in Czech Republic, but elsewhere as well. And this is a mindset shift that people should have, because they always this kind of like, oh yeah, I'm small and poor, and these guys are big and they always steal money. It's not always like this. I'm not denying that, but it's not always like this. So you have to carve that place on that shelf by solving a problem for that bar owner. And that problem should be a problem that other brands cannot solve. And if that's the thing, then it's easy, let's say, in because it's easier, because you're not challenging on one-to-one. You bring them on a different kind of path. I'm always saying, like, if you are you are on a motorbike and you're the small guy, and the big brand is on a truck, and the truck is chasing the bike, So where do you go? You go into a small alley, where the truck cannot get, you don't go on a highway where the truck, can, sidetrack you. No? So it's also like going in places where you can actually have that kind of conversation with the bar owner, and you get off that play of kickbacks and rebates and all these kind of like things, because you are in a, I wouldn't say unique, because unique is a big word, but you are different enough and differentiated enough and distinctive enough to actually play that card.
So we talked about it briefly earlier about social media in the digital age and how so many brands. It is crazy to me that so many brands. I look them up when I'm tagging them or something. I'm like, how do you only have X amount of followers? Like, how do you have less followers than I do as a personal brand, and you're a substantially big brand? With marketing in the digital age being so important, how do you sort of portray that to your clients about bring again that authenticity to the digital space? Because I feel like sometimes they're so worried about it being super polished, and I always live by a rule that quality is subjective. So there's stuff that I put out, I'm sure you feel the same way, there's some stuff that I put out, I'm like, is that exactly what I wanted? Probably not, but then it resonates with people, and people love me doing my blooper reel and all that sort of stuff. How do you put that across to your clients and these small brands that just put out your story and people will listen?
I mean, this is an interesting one, because, like, for example, like I give you a real example. When I do my podcast, building on what you're saying, I do collab stories with a guest, no? And many times the guest is only accepting the collaboration on their profile, but not on the brand profile, because it messes up the look and feel.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm giving you a platform, for getting into thousands of people. I mean, it's listen on 115 countries now, my podcast. So, you are worried about your polish because I have a red, because that's my corporate color, and you don't want to have it because yours is green or purple or whatever that is. But, and who the hell is going to look at nowadays in 2025, talking about 2025, at the homepage of your Instagram? People are just kind of like scrolling on these, like tum 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 tum, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Who is looking at that? So to that point, I mean that it's about building relationship, and this, for example, this collabs on Instagram it's a door opener. I mean, like, for me, it's a big winner, because everybody, I gain from being into your network, you gain into being in my network, and all this kind of thing. And this works with bars at the same time, like, because this whole conversation goes with bars. I can do a fantastic cocktail, I tag an outlet, and then maybe they don't accept the collaboration. But, basically all the people following me will know that there is a fantastic cocktail in your bar, and they may not know your bar. So why don't you accept it? Now, not just like, bitching about the, the collab, but you know what I mean? It's like a mindset thing. That's where I'm getting that. It's like, like you're talking to, I don't know, influencers and spending a lot of money on influencers because they show your bottle for 30 seconds on their channel, while, you are just like worried about, image, and the interesting thing is that, this is the big winner for visibility, because nowadays, I mean, big brands, if you think about big brands like, logos and neon lights and POS material, glorifiers, now cool places don't want to show those things, and sometimes I'm challenged as like, oh, we don't have enough visibility on that bar. Yeah, but that bar is posting cocktails with your product, tagging your profile, and thousands of people are seeing it. While if who the hell is looking at the glorifier in the back bar with the illuminated sign that nobody cares because they ordered at the table?
Yeah.
So it's this kind of like new mindset that everybody should have. Bar owners, bartenders, brand owners, everybody should take and embrace this digital amplification that everybody talks about, but nobody knows what it is.
Yeah, content is content. That doesn't like if someone. I agree. If someone tags you and you don't share it to a story or you don't like collaborate with them, it's really really tough. It's always been a tough thing with me in the podcast. Like sometimes I've had people on and they will not share it to any of their social media. I'm like, come on, man. What we just had a like wonderful hour-long talk. Why aren't you sharing this stuff with your network to help me out? I'm sharing it to my network to help you out. So like it's a win-win situation. And yeah, a lot of brands just because I run a cocktail bar, I tag people and I tag brands, and then I will get just silence, and I'll see that they'll leave me on red. They'll leave me on red
Yeah,
on
no,
Instagram, and
but
I'm just like, come on.
no, but this is also, for example, on the big brand side. I work with many big brands as well, and they've got global accounts, and they don't want to do local accounts on Instagram, for example, no. And it's like, yeah, but if you don't accept my collab, nobody. I understand that from a global standpoint, like nobody cares about a great boulevardier with that brand in Prague, like
Yeah.
fine, but then let me have a Czech Republic account.
Yep.
No, because we need to control all the information and so on. But if you are exporting to that country and you trust that distributor to handle your product, why can't you trust them to handle an Instagram account? I think it's a little bit, you know what I mean? Like it's, and this is, going back to your question about 2025, if people were to do more wisely Instagram as a media, it could be LinkedIn, it could be anything, people would gain so much traction that they are sitting on a on gold, and they're just like sitting there and they're not using that.
What's one piece of advice for someone starting a craft brand in 2025 that you would give them, and what do you see as the common mistake that most brands make when they start up?
I'm trying to think of something I haven't said yet.
We've covered a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like the main thing is don't take ownership of the 100% of that journey. Like there is too much. That game. Like we used to call it like I don't know what's the name in English. In Italian, we call it like patata bollente. It's like the hot potato.
Okay, yeah, yep.
Like you're just like passing it not to get burned in your hands, no? So very often it feels like these bottles are like that, I want to give it to the importer. Oh, it's yours now. No, it's not mine anymore. Like now it's up to you to do it. So take accountability for that. Don't just, if you send that email, if you ship that pallet, if you ship that case, don't think that the invisible hand will sort it out. The visible hand doesn't sort anything. You have to take that hand and show them where to go. So, and this is the biggest mistake I see all the time. That is like, oh, I thought that, like the Romans used to say, stultum est dicere putabam. It's stupid to say, I thought, it's a 2,000 years old kind of like saying. So I guess it has some traction there. No? It's like you just, you just go and follow up what you're doing. And then you will understand so many things that you're taking for granted.
In North America, we say when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me.
That's fantastic.
So on a personal entrepreneurial level, what's your big plan for 2025 for yourself?
My big plan is I'm working on digital courses.
Nice.
So I want to really offer solution, because until now I've been mainly talking about content, like generating content, but then I really want to create solutions for people. So really like how to get on a cocktail menu, how to get to the, sell the first bottle to the first bar, these kind of things that I can package, and then people in 40 minutes of me talking and going through some slides can actually click and buy without having to, read many newsletters or listen to many podcasts. And this will go in tandem with, of course, what keep on doing which is the podcast and all the other things that I'm working on.
Nice. So at the end of every episode, I always do 5 deep questions. And so there are 5 deep questions for every entrepreneur and every guest that I have. So what is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
What could this be? I would say like the big learning that in the last few years is really like this focus on the trajectory rather than like big dreams, and go on step by step, and focus on the trajectory, and then make the first step, and then grow step by step. In the past I've been too much of a dreamer, very often, dreaming about things and then changing my mind and going through things and, like getting stuck and then restarting. And the big learning was like, okay, like it doesn't matter if I go a little bit left and right, as long as the actual, trajectory is correct. And then do this kind of like, I love the book Atomic Habits, like fix the habits, fix the system, and then the output, fix the input, and the output will fix itself, if you fix the inputs.
Nice. If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
That's a big one. I would say never take things for granted, and always always check if it's even if you blindly believe it, always check, and you don't make a you don't make a sin if you're checking, just to be sure.
If you could leave, looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you understood earlier in life?
It would be about keeping things simple. It's funny that sometimes I'm overthinking all the stuff that I'm discussing here, and then I go back to my computer, and then I found a document from 5 years ago, and that's exactly what I had as an intuition today, and I'm like, what the hell have I been doing for the last 5 years? I knew it all. So sometimes it's like, don't second guess yourself, if you just trust your gut, and if it's simple enough, just go for it, and then fix it as you go, rather than waiting for perfection and then not starting.
How do you find success, and has that definition of it changed over time?
Success. Definition of success.
And has it changed?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, definition of success, I mean, when I was at university, I think it was like making a lot of money. And now success is really like doing stuff you're obsessed with and you're passionate about, and focusing on the lifestyle, and bridging that passion with a lifestyle, and scaling that rather than scaling money. If you can make enough money to live, but doing what you love, which I guess it's what I do and what you are also doing, otherwise we wouldn't be talking to each other tonight. Then it's fine, and I see so many people that are just like craving for money and doing a job that they hate just because it brings them money. And this is like one of the decisions that I've done to leave corporate life, because it wasn't making me happy. And then I decided, let me jump off the rail now that I'm, at a good level, but not at a crazy level where I need to fuel that machine. And I've got already like 2 villas and 5 cars and 1 boat. And then I cannot leave this job because I have to maintain all those fixed costs.
Yeah. What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
My legacy is really like, I hope that it will be about keeping things simple, and building brands from the bottom up. Like this is what I really love when people stop me in the, at BCB or whatever, and they say, hey man, brands are built bottom up. Like I know that I'm going the right direction. And it's about, making people, I wouldn't call it like, it's not only like the solving issues for people, but it's really like when I get a message on Instagram or LinkedIn by someone and say, man, a lot of the stuff I know about this industry is thanks to you. Thank you, your podcast. You're doing great. Often that person hasn't paid me anything. They haven't bought a subscription. They haven't bought a course. They haven't bought a consultancy. But those are the people that basically give me that, feedback and tell me that I'm going the right direction, that I'm changing even like the life of someone, in a small sense, but I'm actually doing something. So this is like the steps that I'm taking is basically like keeping on sharing my knowledge so that knowledge doesn't get lost and I don't end up like I was when I started, when I lost the 100 years of knowledge of my great-grandfather and my grandfather, and I had to rebuild it.
Look at that. We literally started with that comment and we've gone all the way around back to the exact same comment. That is like the perfect way to end the podcast. Chris, it's been fantastic talking to you. And honestly, as I said in my introduction, like I just watch you on LinkedIn and that sort of thing. And the stuff you say, I do agree that you put that stuff out in the world and it for free. The people aren't necessarily paying you for it or anything like that. And people are actually taking a ton of value away from that. And hopefully putting it into play for their brand themselves.
Fantastic. It was a great chat and a pleasure to finally get to spend a little time together.
Yeah, let's like in 2025. Let's try and meet up face to face and have a coffee.
I would love to.
Okay, man. Well, thank you very much for your time, man. Cheers. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Chris. Ciao. Bye. Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.